Read across is a technique for predicting toxicological properties for your substance of interest by using data from other similar substances. The key point is similarity. This should be endpoint and study specific, and the concept is this. Let's say you have a target chemical with a data gap for skin sensitization. Your substance contains a functional group that can trigger a reaction that causes skin sensitization. If you have substances that contain the same functional group and have experimental data for skin sensitization, we call these analogues. You can then read across the experimental data to your target chemical. Read across is simple, cheap, and transparent. When carrying out a read across, the first aspect to consider is the aim of your assessment. The level of uncertainty you can accept will depend on your aim. For example, if you are doing this to prioritize which molecule to use for a new product, the acceptable level of uncertainty can be greater than if you're doing a risk assessment. The next step is to collect all available data for your target substance. This would include the analytical characterization, QSAR predictions, as well as any existing toxicology studies. With this analysis, the data gaps will be identified. Step 3 is to build an overarching similarity rationale. As mentioned before, the similarity hypothesis must be based on the endpoint. For example, you would have a different similarity hypothesis for, say, genotoxicity to repeated dose toxicity. The similarity hypothesis will guide you in choosing the most relevant analogues for the endpoint. And these two steps go hand in hand and is often an iterative process dependent on what data is available. Finding suitable analogues and assessing the analogue quality is perhaps the most important step in the read across. There are 4 strategies you can use. The first are structural analogues, where you assume a particular functional group is responsible for the toxicity endpoint. Mechanistic analogues can be used if you have information about the mechanism of action. For example, that a particular fragment drives the toxicity. Structural analogues can also be mechanistic. Biotransformation analogues are used where there is available data on the metabolites of your target compound and it can be shown that the metabolism is rapid. Biological analogues use the AOP concept, mapping the complete mode of action. The application as well as the strengths and weaknesses of these strategies are explained in much more detail on our QSAR and Read Across training courses. So which strategy to use will actually depend on the context. And if you can, use multiple approaches so that it improves your weight of evidence. But the key point, especially from a regulatory standpoint, is you must be able to justify your choice of analogues or categories. Step 5 is where you test the quality of your analogues based on their similarity to a range of properties. At this point, you might reject some analogues or refine your hypothesis. You can then proceed to data gap filling by doing a read across or trend analysis. If it is a quantitative read across, you can use these different approaches for data filling. Finally, you have to assess the uncertainty of the whole read across. Currently, there is no objective way to do this. However, 2 approaches are typically used. One is an expert opinion, and the other is more data-driven and could be considered less subjective. So to summarise, the acceptable level of uncertainty is driven by the context. A variety of software, free and commercial tools, are available to help you through these steps. If you would like to know more about in silico methodologies or wish to learn how to use the software tools, Tox Navigation runs training courses on using those techniques for regulatory applications. We have an online course that is video streamed. We have a classroom course held in London, presented by Professor Mark Cronin and Dr. Judith Madden from Liverpool Moores University, along with Eleanor Fioravanzo from Tox Navigation. We also run bespoke courses for companies or organisations, either on-site or remotely. And for more details, follow this link to our training page on our website. We also provide consultancy support for in silico methods. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us.